A priest is a man who, according to the precepts and rituals of the Catholic Church, mediates between faithful men and God. He is the one who intercedes for believers for the atonement of sins. However, this is not always the case, as many religious leaders become involved in abominable acts, which can even break the faith of many believers. The following case occurred in the municipality of Mistrato in Colombia, causing shock throughout the entire country. Hello, welcome to the Crime Documentary Files channel. On February 15, 2007, a farmer from the town of Ankerma was walking along a road and decided to take a shortcut to reach his destination faster. As he entered that territory, he observed two cremated bodies near the banks of the Huatica River, just off the path. Surprised, he ran from the place to notify the police. When he reached the road, he saw a car approaching and signaled for it to stop. The driver, hearing what had happened, went to the CTI, the Ankerma Technical Investigation Corps. When investigators arrived at the scene, they found the charred bodies. Because the fire had consumed them almost entirely, their gender could not be established. However, a religious necklace and an earring were found. By the time the bodies were removed, larvae had already begun their process, indicating that the bodies had been there for at least 48 to 52 hours. An examination of the area revealed a photographic negative a few meters away. The bodies were transferred to forensic medicine for legal necropsy, but due to the extensive charring, identification was impossible. Some bone fragments were sent to the Department of Forensic Anthropology in Bogotá. Analysis determined that the bones belonged to a woman between 30 and 35 years old and a girl between 5 and 7 years old. The adult had 2 injuries to the skull, specifically in the frontal bone, and the child had an injury to the occipital region. Both victims remain unidentified. Days later, experts revealed the found scroll. There were 4 images, one of a man, another of a young woman, and 2 panoramic photos of a landscape. Despite this, they still did not know who these individuals were, and the images did not provide any clues. One morning, one of the investigators was reading the newspaper when he suddenly saw a note that said, "Mother and daughter are still missing." The news article stated that since February 12, 2007, María del Carmen Arango, 31 years old, and her daughter María Camila Díaz Arango, 6 years old, had been missing. They were last seen in the municipality of Mistrato, where they were visiting Mr. José Díaz Toro, who was serving as the parish priest at that time. The investigation led the police to contact the person who had filed the report months earlier at the Pereira CTI. It was Héctor Fabio Carmona, the brother of the missing woman, who managed to identify the religious necklace found at the scene, as well as one of the images revealed in the scroll, which undoubtedly showed the parish priest José Díaz Toro. It was now necessary to confirm whether the bodies corresponded to the missing people. The Institute of Legal Medicine asked the CTI of Ankerma to request a DNA sample from one of the young woman's relatives to send to the Forensic Genetics Department for comparison with the DNA of the victims to see if they corresponded to Maria and her daughter. The result came in June, showing that the DNA matched 2 females, mother and daughter, María Arango and Camila Díaz, who in life were the spouse and daughter of the parish priest of the Iglesia del Pueblo, José Díaz Toro. This secret was only known by Maria's family. According to the testimony collected from Maria's brother, both had arrived at the Mistrato priest's house, where Díaz Toro worked, on the afternoon of February 7th. Due to the hidden relationship the priest had, Maria and her daughter lived in ravines and only saw him once every 15 days. Upon hearing rumors that Díaz Toro had an alleged niece living in the priest's house, Maria decided to check it out for herself, suspecting that he was possibly being unfaithful. On February 12th, at the Mistrato priest's house, María Carmona called her family, very distressed and desperate, because she had found a young girl in the church house. She told them she was going to confront her partner. From then on, they did not hear from her again. Days passed with no sign of her presence. They called her insistently, but when she did not answer, her brothers decided to visit the priest at the Mistrato church. Unexpectedly, he said he had not heard from her since February 12th. Days passed until they finally decided to report her disappearance to the authorities. Initially, the police found it hard to believe that the main suspect was a priest. However, as they learned the story, they began to understand the situation being investigated. Maria and José Díaz met in 1995 when José was the parish priest of the church in the municipality of Mistrato, Buenos Aires, Cauca, in Colombia. María del Carmen, who was barely 19 years old at the time, grew up in that municipality alongside her siblings. As the eldest, she helped her widowed mother take care of the family, coming from humble origins. Maria always grew up lacking a father figure, which she found in the company of the church priest. Maria was a slim, blonde, good-looking woman. She attended Mass in the afternoons, and it didn't take long for the priest to fall in love with her. They soon began meeting, and her family noticed she spent a lot of time at the church. Even so, they did not suspect anything due to the vows of chastity that parish priests take. A year later, Díaz Toro moved from the church to a nearby town called Pueblo Rico and asked Maria to go with him, even though they couldn't be together publicly. He took her to live in the city of Pereira so he could visit her constantly. However, as time passed, their relationship began to deteriorate. Maria wanted a normal relationship and a family, but he was not willing to leave his position as a priest. She had to settle for seeing him once a week and hiding their relationship. This began to upset her, and she thought about doing something to change the situation. 4 years later, in 2001, Maria became pregnant. She had the hope that they would finally be a family and that her partner would receive the news with great joy. However, it was quite the opposite. He became upset with her and asked her to get rid of the baby because it put his priesthood at risk. Desperate and afraid of being discovered, he took her to live in the municipality of Dos Quebradas in the department of Risaralda. It was then that his attitude began to change radically. He now felt burdened by Maria and their daughter and did not know what to do. Months passed until October 2002, when their daughter, María Camila Díaz Arango, was born. The priest's efforts to hide the fact that he had been having relations with Maria for years began to wear thin after the birth of their daughter. He constantly worried about the danger of being discovered. Unhappy with his hidden family life, Díaz Toro started going out at night to nearby municipalities in search of new romances. Maria made one last desperate attempt to be together by pressuring the priest, telling him that if he did not renounce the priesthood, she would report him to the church and reveal their relationship. Their problems became more recurrent, and he grew increasingly distant from her and their daughter. Maria had to tell people that her husband was in Spain and that the priest was just a family friend who visited them at his request. Their daughter was forbidden to call him Dad, and when asked about her father, she would say he was in Spain. This situation was exhausting for the young mother, who wanted to consolidate a family. In 2005, Díaz Toro was transferred to Mistrato, and it was there that everything ended. María del Carmen learned of rumors that the parish priest had his niece living in the church house, and she understood what that meant. Faced with these rumors, Maria decided to investigate for herself. On February 7th, she moved with her daughter to the priest's house in Mistrato. Upon arrival, she did not find any young woman, but instead found a clean and welcoming place. However, as days passed, she found a card dedicated to her spouse, along with a photograph of a young woman named Andrea. Enraged, she confronted the priest about it, but he told her that a parishioner had given it to him. The priest asked an acquaintance, Luis Andrea Soto, to tell her that he had given it to him because he had been very kind to his family. Luis did as asked. However, María del Carmen was not satisfied and continued searching for evidence of her partner's infidelity. On February 12th, Maria found something that seemed to upset her greatly: the photographic negative found at the scene, which showed a photograph of a woman. After discovering this, she confronted the priest, but he continued to deny everything. Determined to reveal their relationship, she threatened him again. Afterward, she called her family and explained what had happened. She was resolved to make her relationship with the church priest public. From that day on, they did not hear from her again, and Díaz Toro claimed that she left that night and did not return. It took 9 months for the truth about the events to be known. The priest's maid, María Eugenia Vergara Cardona, decided to give a revealing testimony about what she found the day after the victim's disappearance. Eugenia said that around 4 or 5 in the afternoon on February 12th, she finished her housework at home. The next day, when she returned, Maria and her daughter were no longer there. However, she noticed something that immediately caught her attention. The stairs leading from the second level to the garage had been washed with soap and water, which was strange since she was responsible for all the cleaning tasks. When she entered the room where little Camilla had been sleeping on the second floor, she saw bloodstains on the door panel, and the floor of the room. She followed the blood trail, which continued down the hallway. The walls were also stained up to the first floor, where the garage was located. There, she found a large pool of blood and some black bags with more blood stains, some plastic tiles, and sticks also soaked in blood. When she tried to go up to the third floor where the priest Díaz Toro slept, she saw blood on the stairs and the handrails. What caught her attention the most was that on the terrace of the house, she found the sheets she had put on the bed where the little girl had been sleeping, inside a bucket of soapy water. After seeing this, she looked for the priest to tell him what she had seen and find out what had happened, but his response was very suspicious. When Eugenia confronted him, he simply ordered her to clean the place and told her that nothing had happened and to keep quiet and go back to work. While cleaning, she noticed more bloodstains in the sink, which further disconcerted her. Despite her suspicions, she decided to remain silent. It was not until she found out that the police had not been able to find Maria and her daughter for months that she decided to speak. She also mentioned that since the arrival of María del Carmen and her daughter, she heard constant arguments between the priest and Maria. On one occasion, she observed that the priest came down with his face scratched, followed by Maria in the same condition, indicating they had physically fought. This situation seemed strange to her, but she preferred not to interfere. Díaz Toro had even told her that if anyone asked her about what she had seen inside the priest's house, she should say that everything seemed fine. Something that caught the interest of the police was that on February 12th, the sacristan Luis Alberto Bermudez told María Eugenia that he had entered the priest's house to go to bed around 9 or 10 at night and found it strange that the priest's car was not in the garage while all the lights were on inside the house. At around 2 in the morning, she got up to drink water and noticed that Díaz Toro's car was now in the garage and the light in his room was on, which was unusual since he had never kept the light on so late before. Following the statement from the priest's housemaid, the CTI requested an order to search the property. On November 12, 2007, the criminalistics team received a judge's order to carry out a DNA search at the scene and collect samples to be sent to the laboratory. When the experts entered the property, they applied reagents to search for biological clues. The blue star and black light revealed something surprising: a large amount of blood on the first, second, and third floors of the house. It was evident that something had happened there. On November 21, 2007, the Anserma CTI arrested then-priest José Díaz Toro at a cafeteria in Mistrato Park, as his arrest had been ordered on charges of aggravated homicide, making him the main suspect in the murder of María del Carmen Arango and her daughter. At the arraignment, Díaz Toro did not accept responsibility and pleaded not guilty. Even so, he was detained in the Anserma prison while the evidence collected from the property was analyzed. Weeks later, the results were revealed. The Institute of Legal Medicine confirmed that the biological samples obtained in the priest's house belonged to María del Carmen Arango Carmona and María Camila Díaz Arango, the spouse and daughter of Díaz Toro. The trial began in January 2008. Díaz Toro continued to maintain his innocence, believing that his status as a priest would lead to leniency. However, he was unaware of the evidence the prosecutor's office had against him. During 5 hearings, compelling evidence was presented, including testimonies from the maid of the parsonage and her acquaintance, Andrea Soto. When the priest realized he had no way out, he agreed to a plea deal, which included a reduced sentence in exchange for his confession. In an attempt to negotiate with the prosecutor's office, he agreed to reveal what had happened that terrible night through a handwritten letter from the Anserma prison. In it, he told the entire shocking story, from the beginning of the relationship until the murder was committed. Everything became complicated when he saw Maria enter the church on February 7th at 4 p.m. From that day on, he began to feel anxious and worried because she had threatened to reveal the truth, which would expose him. In the following days, he entered and left the place to attract attention, telling her he wanted people to know he had a wife and daughter. Churchgoers began to question him about Maria and the girl, but he did not know what to do. His anxiety increased as he felt threatened and discredited by his spouse. Anguish and fear took hold of him as he feared losing his priestly position. On the morning of February 12th, they argued violently. Later that day, he went to give a mass at 2 p.m. and left the scene. This is where the case took a 180-degree turn, as he claimed he did not commit the crime alone. According to his story, he sought help from the church gravedigger, Jorge Antonio Morales, telling him what had happened and asking for help to get Maria out of town. Morales agreed and visited him that night. Around 8 p.m., Morales arrived at the house and went up to the 3rd floor. Díaz Toro observed that he was carrying a leather bag. As they greeted each other, María del Carmen came out to see who it was. Suddenly, there was a loud crash and Maria fell down the stairs. Morales had struck her twice on the front of the skull, causing her to roll down to the 2nd floor. When Díaz Toro returned, he found María del Carmen lying on the ground. He remained motionless, unable to react. Morales then went to the little girl's room on the 2nd floor and struck Camila on the back of the head as she slept on her stomach. Terrified, Díaz Toro went to his room. After a few minutes, he came out and saw Morales with some black bags. Together they wrapped the bodies, loaded them into a car belonging to the parish, and drove to a desolate road near the Huatica River. They poured gasoline on the bodies and set them on fire with a match. After fleeing the scene, they returned to the parish after 5 hours. Díaz Toro washed the blood away, but left many traces, which were found by the maid the next day. This account matched perfectly with the evidence found at the scene, helping to reconstruct the events and clarify the incident. In the days following the crime, the priest continued giving masses and appeared quite calm. He never seemed nervous or worried. The entire community was perplexed when they learned of the crime he had committed. In June 2008, he was sentenced to 23 years in prison for cooperating with the police, although many considered this sentence too lenient. The case seemed closed after the initial sentence, reached through a pre-agreement between the prosecution and the accused. However, the Superior Court of Pereira annulled this action and ordered the trial to be restarted without granting any discounts. The court ruled that the prosecutor's office and the judge had made a mistake by not taking into account that at the time of the events, Law 1098 was already in place, which prohibits granting benefits when the victims are minors. Additionally, on July 4, 2008, the CTI of Anselmo captured Jorge Antonio Morales Ramirez, the municipality's gravedigger and the priest's accomplice, for his alleged participation in the murders. A year and 3 months later, in October 2009, he was sentenced to 17 years and 2 months in prison for his co-authorship in the crime. In July 2010, the Catholic Church was ordered to pay 600 million Colombian pesos to the victims' relatives. Finally, on June 5, 2013, the Belén court sentenced the priest to 45 years and 10 months in prison, to be served in the Manizales prison in Colombia. There is no doubt that nothing hidden will remain undisclosed. Here's today's crime story. What do you think about the crime committed by this priest? Do you think a 45-year prison sentence for taking 2 lives is too lenient? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section of the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next case.